Strange things are happening around the Pacific Ocean right now.
A 10-foot great white shark spotted dangerously close to a group of children swimming north of Los Angeles.
Hundreds of hungry pelicans are flocking to Peruvian ports and coastal markets.
The worst winter storm front to hit Chile in more than a decade.
And all signs point to El Niño as a major reason why.
A number of climate models are calling for the possibility of a Super El Niño brewing this summer.
El Niño is not uncommon. This climate phenomenon occurs every few years, but this one could be different. It's been called a potential super or Godzilla El Niño, and it could fuel extreme and dangerous weather conditions globally through 2027. So now seems like a good time to explain the science behind El Niño, how strong this one might be, and how it could impact our global ecosystem. An El Niño gets declared when trade winds shift and temperatures rise in the Pacific Ocean.
The trade winds along the equator are constantly blowing from the east to the west. They're called the trade winds because hundreds of years ago, the sailing ships could rely on those steady winds to move them across the Pacific. And they essentially pile up warm water in the far western Pacific. When they slow down, even briefly, they can allow that warm water to slide backwards under the surface of the ocean.
All of that water will become warm as those trade winds weaken. And then when they hit about a half a degree centigrade, about 1 degree Fahrenheit over the central Pacific, then our team here will declare an El Niño event.
NOAA says the El Niño has officially begun.
El Niño is a part of the naturally recurring climate pattern known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO.
That acronym, ENSO, El Niño Southern Oscillation, encompasses the entire El Niño and La Niña system. La Niña is the opposite phase with cooler than average surface temperature. And generally, we see swings between the two. They tend to recur on a 2 to 7 year cycle. There's also a neutral phase in the middle when neither El Niño nor La Niña are present.
So El Niño is just a normal part of this constantly replaying cycle in the ocean. But what's not normal is how strong scientists are predicting that this current El Niño could become.
We do have a grading system. We actually grade it based on the sea surface temperatures in the central Pacific, greater than 2 degrees Celsius, which is about 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a very strong El Niño. We have an 81% chance of being in a very strong El Niño. That's the highest odds I've seen for that.
The atmospheric response scales with that. So if that temperature is much, much warmer than average, then that's a stronger El Niño and has a stronger influence over global atmospheric circulations.
A contributing factor to the strength of this El Niño is what's known as a Kelvin wave, a 9,000-mile-long warm water mass moving across the Pacific that's a whopping 7.5 degrees Celsius or 13.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the average.
That warm water moving under the surface, it rises up as it moves to the east and provides a source of heat for the surface and therefore feeds an El Niño event.
We've only seen El Niños with this much strength a few times in the past. From 1877 to 1878, an El Niño caused a famine that killed millions of people. From 1982 to 1983, a superpowered El Niño brought drought to nearly every continent and destructive floods in North and South America. And another from 1997 to 98 caused widespread record rainfalls, mudslides, wildfires, and coral bleaching. So, what can we expect with the strength of the current El Niño continuing to gather over the coming months? The World Meteorological Organization's seasonal outlook is predicting temperatures and rainfall far outside of global averages. And a stronger El Niño means more intense shifts in weather.
It makes a parade of storms more likely to happen.
Because El Niño can shift rain away from where it normally falls, it's not just that wetness or dryness increases, but where it increases, in places that aren't necessarily used to dealing with those conditions.
You can get a lot of these kind of pattern changes. There's parts of Western Chile, the Atacama Desert, that they don't get rain maybe once every 25 years, but they do, and it's an El Niño. More wetness into Southern California, across Arizona, Texas.
The potential risk of extreme weather events is higher given the strength of this El Niño. Droughts in southern Asia, flooding in the Americas, and hurricanes forming in the East Pacific Ocean.
They can bring a lot more rainfall to the Peru, Ecuador, and Chile, and have devastating consequences there.
We see drier conditions in Indonesia, which can contribute to wildfires. The far eastern Pacific the water can be quite a lot warmer than average, and that has a lot of implications for fish and for species that depend on fish.
Those sharks that are showing up on the beaches of Southern California, they're heading north of their usual habitat because their normal hangouts have gotten too warm, and the fish that they eat are migrating to cooler, more nutrient-rich water. And as this El Niño gathers strength, it appears it will continue through the winter when it's expected to peak.
North America, Southern Australia, and some other regions like that, we expect those impacts to be greater in the winter. More rain, especially in the southern tier of the U.S. Historically, we have seen snowier winters during El Niño, largely because of that increased moisture.
But even with that foresight, we still face a test of what some are calling one of the strongest El Niños ever recorded.